webinar is already being recorded, so step one done. Everybody's muted, but if you have any questions as we're going through, then there is a questions tab on the top right, the little message bubble with a question mark. So yeah, whoever's not talking from Emma and I will be having a look in there. So if you've got any questions as we're going through, probably most relevant when Emma's talking about her a little bit, please do put them in the box and we will endeavour to answer them as we go through. So yeah, we've got a few bits on. A quick little update on what's been happening with Otto. Emma's going to talk a bit about industry news, what's been going on in the world of software. Then the main part of the webinar, which is kind of some techniques for dealing with bookkeeping backlogs, and then there'll be a final little time if anybody's got any questions, we'll run through those. Okie doke. So yeah, with Otto, with a lot of the work that we've been doing has been kind of under the hood. We've been putting in some improvements that are going to allow kind of some more useful features, I guess, for customers, so that they can trigger Otto to do stuff outside of the regular daily schedule. So the first one that we're hoping to start gradually rolling out from next week is to trigger individual client reconciliations. So I think that's kind of a common thing that probably practices have, where maybe Otto's done is kind of daily reconciliation, and then somebody goes in and perhaps adds some more bank rules because you've noticed a new type of transaction that's coming in, and you'd like those to be reconciled today, but you don't really want to go and do those manually. Or maybe, as is the theme of today's webinar, maybe you've got a new client with a backlog, and again, you're kind of working through all the different types of transactions, and you found that there's a rule that you'd like to add that's going to bulk reconcile a load of stuff. I think there's lots of different cases where triggering reconciliations for an individual client outside of the standard kind of schedule is useful. So that's going to be the first thing. We've also got some ideas for some other bits and pieces that will kind of be possible once we've got all this put in. But yeah, I think the first one's going to be that. As I say, we're going to start gradually rolling that out, hopefully next week. Make sure that everything's kind of working nice and seamlessly and there's no problems, and then it will be kind of rolled out to everybody who's using with Otto at the moment.
Okay, so in terms of industry news, we've got quite an interesting, exciting thing from Briefcase that they're calling Autopilot, and this is where Briefcase will review all of the transactions, all of the documents that you upload to Briefcase, and then auto-publish the ones that, in their words, are legible, complete, and historically consistent with previous transactions you've published. So kind of like in layman's terms, this is, I suppose, supercharging supplier rules that you might have in other receipt capture software. It is going to, or it is clear in Briefcase which documents have been dealt with by Autopilot. There's a little magic wand next to them, so you are able to see exactly what has been done and why. And they give a little bit of a explanation as to why Briefcase has done what it's done. So I think that's really, really exciting in terms of receipt capture. Sticking with receipt capture, Apron have recently released bank statement extraction. I know this is something that a lot of Apron users were crying out for. So in the same way that you can do with auto entry and Dext, you can upload a PDF bank statement and get that extracted so you can import it into your bookkeeping software. They've also recently changed how they deal with duplicate documents. So until quite recently, anything that was identified as a duplicate was put into a rejection log. They've now removed that log, and instead, when you are looking in the purchases or sales, most likely purchases, inbox in Apron, you will see a little red I in a circle, so the letter I, and if you click that, that will give you a side-by-side view of which documents it believes are duplicates, and then you can archive or delete, however you prefer to do it, the duplicate in there, or you can also say that they're not duplicates. So that is a much easier way of being able to compare the possible duplicates and what we previously needed to do, which was open it in another tab and compare that way. So yeah, this side-by-side view is really helpful. And then lastly on Xero, so it was XeroCon in Brisbane last week, and they announced a few different updates. One of them is that they are going to create a central partner hub, which will be called Partner Hub, where you will be able to easily move between the different separate parts of Xero. So this will be things like the XPM, so the practice manager, work papers, Xero tax, all of the different at the moment completely separate parts of Xero will be easily navigated to from this partner hub. I don't know exactly when that's coming, but they did say soon. So hopefully within the next few months we'll be able to see that, and I think that will streamline and save time for those of you who are using things like XPM and work papers.
Cool. On those things, I
Yeah.
was going to say, so I think that autopilot thing's kind of quite a good addition, isn't it, from Briefcase?
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons that we kind of hadn't kind of moved over to these AI solutions is that they tended not to have kind of the equivalent of the supplier rules, which we rely on quite a lot in the practice. And I think for us, it seemed like most of our clients had quite consistent purchases, and so we were going to benefit more from those supplier rules rather than the more intelligent kind of processing of these things. So I think it's a really nice approach to kind of hopefully have the best of both worlds on those. So that will hopefully be a really nice improvement. And I guess the other thing to mention for Apron is, do you want to just mention, for anybody who does happen to use Apron already, about the kind of, as I understood it, there were changes to how it works out what's a duplicate compared to what people might be used to?
Yeah, so when at the same time as they've made these changes to duplicate handling and removing the rejection log, there appears to have been a change to how they actually identify the duplicates. Now, I'm waiting for more information from Apron about this. So yeah, hopefully next time I'll be able to explain, or maybe when the recording goes out, I'll be able to say what the outcome was. But we noticed at roughly the same time as these changes, or maybe it's a bit before, documents that we know to be duplicates have not been flagged up as such in Apron. And the ones where we've noticed this happening is mainly where, I think it's Stripe that causes this, isn't it? Where the client receives both an invoice and a receipt in the same email for the same purchase. And so they just, how our clients do it, they just forward that email. So what goes into Apron is both the receipt and the invoice for this. So it's things like Dubsado, that sort of stuff. And Apron used to identify those correctly as duplicates. So in Apron speak, they were non-identical duplicates. So very clearly for the same purchase, but it's not like the client was uploading two invoices exactly the same. It was just two documents for the same purchase. And that doesn't seem to be happening now. So both of those documents are appearing in Apron just as normal documents would do, and so we're having to be quite careful to and remember which documents we've already seen and processed, because we had actually published a few of these thinking they were completely separate documents.
It's kind of more strict, I guess, as it appears it's more strict, and that perhaps they're trying to identify, I don't know, maybe as an example, perhaps if somebody had got a paper version of an invoice, for example, in the post, but they also had a PDF, it would potentially recognise those. So as you say, you're waiting to hear back from them, but as it stands, it looks like that might have changed a bit in a way that could affect.
Yeah, and so so I got in touch with them yesterday about it, and they came back and said, "Oh," and I gave them an example and said, "Oh, they're not duplicate documents." So they are. So so just waiting to hear back. But yeah, if you are using Apron and you've been kind of like merrily using it, and it's been picking up duplicates for you in the past, you might just want to be particularly vigilant at the moment, because something has changed, and I'm not quite sure what at the minute. but that side-by-side view is quite nice when it does pick up the duplicate.
Yeah.
So yeah, today, as Stuart mentioned before, we're going to be looking at dealing with bookkeeping backlogs. So people refer to this in all sorts of different terms. So backlogs, clean up, tidy up, catch up, whatever, however you like to describe it. This is commonly, or certainly what we've seen in our practice, it's particularly common with new clients to us. So that may be clients who are a little bit behind with their bookkeeping. It might be clients, which is quite often the case, that you are up against either a limited company accounts deadline or the self-assessment deadline, and then suddenly they've realised that they have a full year of bookkeeping that needs to be done, and so they've come to you to do it. And often I find that these tend to fall into two different camps. So you will often find that there is just no paperwork at all, or there is a small amount of paperwork. Quite often these people don't have lovely files, whether electronic or hard copy, of all of their paperwork. So there's quite a lot of back and forth while you tell them what you need, and they will go off and dig out the required paperwork. So thought we'd look today at kind of how we can just generally approach these, and how we're doing it in our practice, and how obviously we're using with Otto to help us with that. So do jump in, Stuart, with anything that you want to add. I know you've been talking to a few with Otto users about how they've been dealing with backlogs recently. So jump in if you have anything to add. How we in the practice deal with this is we always start with bank reconciliation. So not to teach you all how to suck eggs, but that will give you the cash position. So that will establish the cash position and provides a framework for everything else. So the kind of the order that we do these things in is we run an initial health check. So we use Xenon Connect for that, but there's Xenon, there's Dex Precision, there are other tools that help you with doing that, and that kind of gives us our starting point, and then we work on the bank reconciliation. Often that's importing bank statements or setting up bank feeds. I think it's rare, certainly in my experience, that there are bank feeds set up and just no one has done any reconciliation. It's often you are kind of starting, almost starting from scratch with the bank side of things. So we're doing the bank rec, then we look at sales ledger, purchase ledger, payroll, and any VAT that is involved as well. And kind of throughout this whole process, we are regularly running the Xenon health check just to spot anything. I think it's particularly useful to help flag issues that you wouldn't necessarily just come across while you're doing things. Some of them are a little hidden, some of the issues. So if there's no paperwork at all, or you've just got a small amount of paperwork, then I guess you've got a couple of decisions to make at this point. If the client is not VAT registered, then kind of the more obvious solution that you might pick is to just work from the bank statements. That's not necessarily going to give you absolutely everything. Obviously, if they've been paying for things not with the business bank account or business card, it won't spot those things. But I think sometimes with these things, you kind of have to take a bit of a pragmatic view of it, and you're not necessarily going to be able to find absolutely everything. I think particularly if they are if they are kind of merging their business banking and their personal banking, it's going to be difficult. But I think if they're not VAT registered, then that kind of gives you a little bit more option, because you could just decide to work purely from the bank statement. In that case, how we would do that, we would have a review of all of the transactions, and then we'd go on a mad bankroll spree and set all of those up and creating as many as we can to deal with the bulk of those bank statements. So we in fact did have this with one of our clients. We'd taken on a relatively new client not so long ago, and they had not previously had one of their Stripe accounts set up in Xero, and so we brought that in, and we had 1,600 transactions all to do, the vast majority of which could be done using bank rules. So we set that up, ran Otto, and he's ploughed through those. I think I spent about 30, maybe 45 minutes setting up the bank rules, and then also just went and reconciled everything, which is obviously a lot better than me sat there reconciling 1,600 transactions. So yeah, you can either do that kind of like that bank rule spree at the beginning, or set up a few, and then as you're working through, kind of narrowing it down further and further, setting up more bank rules as you can, and then reconciling those. If you didn't want to use bank rules, that there might be some things that just don't necessarily apply to those transactions going forward. You might want to use cash coding in Xero to help with that. If there is some paperwork, or if the client is VAT registered, then you want to get as much paperwork as you can. And this is where using a receipt capture tool is really going to help. If you do have, if you can set up rules, or if you're using Briefcase and you can use the Autopilot, being able to process those documents in the receipt capture tool is as quickly as possible is really going to help. And then if you are using Otto, then you'll be able to use SmartMatch to help you deal with those. Personally, I prefer to just deal with everything almost all at once. So I don't work on, we work from back to front, so we work from the oldest month forward, but we don't say, right, today we're going to work on July, and then bring July up to date, ask for all of the paperwork, and then only move on to August once we've got all of July's done. We kind of work through as much as we can, and then send a list of missing paperwork to clients kind of as we go along. It's very much client specific, though. You will have some clients who do just want to get, like, they want to work on 1 month, get as much of that done as possible, find all of the receipts for that, and then move on to the next one. Do you have anything to add to that, Stuart, as to how?
I was going to say, I think one thing that you might need to do if you're kind of setting up like the Stripe feed or whatever for the first time, you're probably going to have to go into Stripe and download that historical data as a CSV, and then format it so that you can import that into Xero. Normally, these things only start working from when you set them up going forward. I guess the other thing was, I spoke to somebody quite recently, and they seem to have quite quite a different approach for their limited and VAT registered clients compared to their their sole traders and who weren't VAT registered, where they kind of didn't require documents at all, as far as I understood, and they were making a lot more use of bank rules. So I think partly this is kind of, you need to pick and choose the bits that fit in with your own ways of working, don't you? We're quite strict, I think, for our clients, where we require documents if we can. So obviously, as Emma said, you probably have to be a bit pragmatic if it's historical stuff. But I think generally our focus would be on getting as much paperwork as possible, but maybe your requirements are different, and so trying to get all that paperwork is not such a big deal, and you would be working more from the bank, and then those bank rules, I think, are going to save a lot of time, aren't they? So I think those are the two things for me. You're possibly going to have to import stuff and spend a bit of time in Excel getting it in the right format for Xero, and kind of picking and choosing the bits here that fit in with how you normally do stuff.
Yeah, and I think on that, it's also about how you are going to want to work with that client going forward, and just how that client is. So we've worked with clients in the past where they weren't VAT registered, so we didn't need to kind of worry about that side of things. But it was also clear that one of the main reasons why there was a backlog in the first place was that they did not see the importance of keeping the paperwork and keeping things up to date. And so we were a little stricter with those because we wanted to kind of instill that behavior going forward. So not because for some people, not everyone, but for some people, if you say, oh, we'll just work from bank statements for the backlog, their next question will be, well, why can't you just do that going forward? So it's kind of trying to instill that good behavior going forward as well. But yeah, as Stu says, that you might want to take a different approach depending on the type of client, limited company or sole trader, VAT registered, not VAT registered. And yeah, we are, I think as a practice, we are quite strict with how we want to work and what we make clients do. And so, our preference whenever we do have catch up is to try and get as much of that paperwork as possible. But sometimes it just doesn't exist. Most of the people we work with are service-based businesses or e-commerce businesses, and so most of their paperwork is electronic. So it's generally not an issue for them to send. I mean, they're going to have to go through their email to find things, but it's much easier for them than it might be, say, for, I don't know, a car garage that only ever deals with paperwork, and it just goes into a pile in a corner, and who knows what happens to it afterwards. So I think it's working through how we deal with. Might just be worth adding how we deal with missing paperwork and how we request that. So we are a Xero only practice. So I can only comment on how we use Xero to do this, but Xero have a report that is called uncoded statement lines. I think it's called, isn't it? Uncoded statement lines.
I think that's what it's called when you get it. I don't know if that's what the report's called actually in Xero, but it's some sort of reconciliation report anyway.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's called uncoded statement lines in the report section, and that you can run it for various different dates, and you can also run it bank account specific or for all bank accounts, and that will give you, I mean, it does exactly what it says. That will give you all of the bank transactions that have not been coded, so that haven't been reconciled. Where it differs with the reconciliation report that you can run is that it is already formatted in a decent enough way that you can then send it on to clients. Whereas with the reconciliation report, you need to do a little bit of formatting in, deleting and moving things around. Whereas that uncoded statement lines, could just be sent off to the client. How we do it is each client of ours has their own Google sheet, and we update that sheet whenever we're doing the bookkeeping. And so they then just get a link so they can go and have a look through, ideally send us all the documents that are on that list. If they don't have anything, then there's a comment section for them to just add, or lost this, don't know what this is for, or whatever. And so for backlogs, we would be updating that regularly so that they can see exactly what we're waiting for.
Also to mention on that, the comments, so there, if we knew we were going to do this, we could have had a screenshot, couldn't we? But so the way it works is you kind of get a CSV file which just has for each bank account, you get like a date, a payee, the particulars, which includes the reference and the description and things, whether it's spent or received, and also the comments. And if you've added any comments in Xero, then they get pulled in. So I think, one approach that I think we've tended to use is when we're going through doing the bookkeeping, we would add comments in there if that made sense, wouldn't we? So that then they appear in that CSV file. We don't have to go in and then add that comment individually. But it's just, as you said, it's pretty sort of straightforward. Hopefully it'll be quite intuitive for the clients to kind of look through the list, see the dates, see the descriptions, and add comments or forward over the documents. So
and some of the receipt capture tools, so Apron definitely, and I think Dex do as well, they have inbuilt features for handling missing documents as well. Personally, we prefer the Google Sheet approach. We found that that's worked really well for our clients, but again, client specific. You might find that directing them straight off to something like Apron so that they can just upload things against each transaction is going to be simpler. So it's what is going to work for you and your clients. So for our backlog people, they kind of fall in line with our standard bookkeeping process. So we are using the Google Sheet for ours. Yeah.
I was going to say, so yeah, one of the reasons that we've kind of decided that as well is that way we aren't restricted to using particular pieces of software. We don't have to make sure that we're using decks. Clients don't get used to that. They don't need to have to create an account or anything like that if that might be necessary. So although it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, so like Emma said, one of the nice features of the Apron one at least is that they will see kind of quite a nice web page with all of the missing documents that we've specifically requested, and then they can just drag and drop the PDFs or whatever, and it will automatically kind of mark those as having been processed or whatever. That's kind of nice. However, it's just another thing that the client has to kind of get used to, and maybe it changes, or maybe we decide that we want to use another tool another day, and then there's this process of having to retrain them or whatever. So yeah, kind of what we found works for our practice, and our practice is obviously kind of specific to us, is to not present too much of this kind of software specific stuff to them, because it can be difficult to get them up to speed on it, and it can be kind of you can end up getting a bit stuck in them if you decide that you'd rather move to something else for whatever reason, and the client's kind of happy doing that. It's difficult to then migrate them across, but obviously do what makes sense for your practice and your clients. But that's kind of our decision, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, and yeah, so it's only actually the clients who are using Apron for payments who even know Apron exists. So yeah, we made that decision quite a while ago that we use a lot of software in our practice, and we do tend to move around quite a lot. If something shiny and new comes along that has got a nice new feature, like for example, Briefcase's Autopilot, we might go off and have a look at that. And we want to be able to try these things and move people around without the hassle of saying to a client, I think say quite often we wouldn't be doing every week, but even like every 6 months or something, saying, "Oh, we're going to move over to this other software now." Everything is just completely smooth from the client's point of view. So, yeah, our approach, because of what we've decided to do with software, and the interaction between clients and that software is, Google Sheet works really well for us. We found out since we've introduced that has really helped us get more missing paperwork. I think just sending a client a list and an email of what they needed, or even just a spreadsheet attached to an email, is just that little extra barrier for people. Whereas if they can just go in and have a look, it's the same link every time. They get a reminder of it, but they're told to go and have a look there. That has really helped. But yeah, your mileage may vary. Different clients are different. You might want to play around a little bit. But yeah, I think when dealing with backlogs, we find that kind of doing little and often is really helpful. And for us, that often means not working month by month and trying to complete a month in full before moving on to the next one, but kind of importing all of the bank information at once and then just working on as much as we can. And yeah, things like bank rules in conjunction with Otto really helps us clear those backlogs quickly. So that was everything that I wanted to mention about backlogs. So if anyone has any questions or either about backlogs or just wants to ask anything related to anything else or how we do things, just let us know.
I was going to say one other thing, kind of when you were saying about people's preferences, perhaps of kind of how often they'd like to receive like your request for missing documents. I'm kind of assuming that most people would probably not like to have like 12 spreadsheets asking for like, I want July's now, and they're like, okay, well, I'll go and get July then. It might, for most people, I think they'd probably rather set aside a bit of time to get all of it done, even if it's a slog, than knowing that they're going to keep getting more and more reminders about stuff. So I assume
Yeah, and that's definitely what I've found in the past with the kind of clients we work with. They kind of want everything in one go, and so then they can just sit down and dedicate an hour or two or a full day to finding as much as possible. But I do know from talking to other practice owners that some of their clients kind of everything all at once is just too much for them. And I get it. It can be quite scary if you're suddenly given a list of like 3,000 documents that you need to provide. That's really scary. Whereas if you're given that amount, but across say 10 different requests, that's still a little scary, but it's more manageable. And I think it's kind of keeping in mind as well, and this will be unique to each client in each situation. How has this backlog built up? Because I think that will also give you a bit of a cue as to how to deal with it. Because if the backlog has built up because of fear, so that someone is just numbers scare them and their accounts scare them and they don't want to deal with it, you are going to deal with that differently, or that requires a slightly different approach to someone who doesn't have the fear, knows what they need to do, but say, for example, their business has completely exploded. And so they've had to move all of their attention onto working in the business and creating the products, providing the services, whatever. And they have all of the paperwork there. They just haven't actually put it into a bookkeeping software yet. And that, in my view, that situation gives you different options than that first one of I don't like looking at anything to do with numbers because it's just too scary. And so it's kind of tailoring your approach to the situation and to how that client likes to work.
One thing that's like not necessarily I've kind of just popped into my head. So I know some software you can link to your email account, for example, and it will go and kind of fetch what it thinks are purchases. Do they tend to work, do you know, for kind of backlogs? Could you say, oh, look back this far? I guess there would be a limit if nothing else. I know we don't use them for any of our clients, so it's not. But that might be a way. If you could say, look back a year or start at this date and kind of search for everything that looks like a purchase, that might work.
I haven't thought about that. Presumably you can go back a certain amount of time. I don't know whether, I don't know how, obviously it'll depend on the software. I would presume that it's not just, oh, well, we plug it in and then it picks up anything going forward. I assume it would also look back. But I'm not sure about that. But presumably you'd be able to go back at least a little while. Whether you'd be able to go back a full year.
Well, because I'm thinking it's a bit like, for example, when you first connect, say, like Dex Commerce or some of those, you can kind of, you can often say, oh, I want to go back, and sometimes it depends, doesn't it? They'll like let you go back a year or whatever. So depending on how far back, that might save your client a bit of effort if they're not so good at forwarding things. But again, because we try not to have these kind of software that integrate too directly with what the client's doing every day, that isn't something we do as a practice. But I think that's certainly something, I think if anything, is kind of like desirable to the client. Sometimes the client is looking for solutions like that, not necessarily the practice. But anyway, I just wondered, maybe it's something worth considering if you're struggling to get the client to go and dig through their, I'm just imagining one of those sort of anxiety-inducing app things where it's got like 30,000 unread emails or something on their Gmail account, and they're like, I can't go in there to look for anything. Maybe you need like an AI agent or something that goes in rather than a person.
Yeah, and I guess slightly less high tech than that. I suppose you've also got options that, again, depending on the client and how they receive information and how they have got their email set up and everything else. But you could potentially do something with rules, I suppose, and like say that you are missing loads of Google receipts, for example, or Google invoices. Then you could, or the client could go into their email and create a rule to forward anything from Google with an attachment or whatever. So yeah, there's potential for that as well if you don't want to set up something that is going directly into their email.
I was going to say, I've thought this before and completely forgot. But the other thing, I guess, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about these duplicates. Is I think this is a real likely case where the client is going to end up sending the same thing multiple times, just because it's obviously going to be basically impossible from their point of view to keep track of what they've already sent. So I think having something in place to either like mitigate the possibility of publishing duplicates or some way of identifying them. So I'm guessing I'm thinking of like in your receipt capture software, hopefully they've got something in place to identify at least some types of duplicates. But also I think like Zen and Connect, for example, I think depending on like if the references are the same and things like that, it can identify duplicates kind of. So I'm just thinking of like some of our clients where you ask for receipts and they send almost everything but what you've asked for. It's probably going to be even worse with a big backlog.
Yeah, he does appear to have stopped this for now. But yeah, we do have one particular client that every time that he gets the missing receipts spreadsheet, he decides just to send us almost everything he's ever sent previously as well. So yeah, we often get quite a few duplicates from him. Yeah, I think I kind of made the assumption, I suppose, at the beginning of this that when dealing, well, that everyone on here is using receipt capture tools, and B, that when you're looking at backlogs, you're going to be using those tools. I think, I mean, personally, I wouldn't approach a backlog without using some sort of receipt capture. I think manually entering the information is just going to really slow everything down.
I think even otherwise, though, it's just like you could easily imagine. I mean, obviously, you've mentioned this thing with Stripe where you get a receipt and a bill, but you can also imagine people get like an email confirmation that they forward, and then they get an invoice, and then maybe sometimes they forward over like the dispatch
thing.
notification or whatever else. It's like you can easily end up with things that aren't really that. They are very dissimilar.
And then that is going to be the chances of you seeing those 2 or 3 documents at the same time is quite low. And so, I think trying to spot those duplicates when you're doing it manually is going to be next to impossible, I think. So, I think, when you are, even if you're not using receipt capture for like other clients, I think if you are looking at backlogs or doing catch-up work, I think having something as stated as that, a tool that is able to identify, even if it's not picking up every single one, where it can identify some duplicates, is really helpful. And then kind of doing a bit of a belt and braces approach with something like Zenon, that again is going to be looking at duplicates, and then at the end one you will probably still have a few that slip through, and you will then have some outstanding bills that you just cannot match against the bank statement, and then it's working through those and making sure that they haven't been dealt with in another way. But I realised I've made an assumption that everyone was using receipt capture.
Well, I think even if you are, though, it's like there's so many different types of document the client might send over that wouldn't even be picked up, that I think it's inevitable that you're going to have extras that are going to get published. And any tips you've got, I guess, for identifying those. I suppose the other thing when you were mentioning kind of this month by month is, I guess, you really need to at some point work month by month to make sure, like, I guess one thing I think, particularly when I think of zero bank rec, is that it isn't really that often about making sure the balance matches a particular point in time. It's more about kind of ticking off that you've seen the bill for something that's on the bank statement. And I guess you really need to probably make sure that the balance is correct at all those different points in time, so you can find any final bits that have been missed or whatever. And I guess that becomes even more of a problem if perhaps the client is spending money out of the business account for personal expenses, or buying business things on their personal card or whatever, and then you've got kind of this mixture of documents that maybe you don't have in every bank account or everything. I think that kind of goes back to what you were mentioning before, is kind of this almost like this pragmatism of knowing that it's not going to be perfect because there's just so many different bits that you might not be able to resolve. But I suppose it's kind of putting these things in place to reduce that as much as possible so that you're going to get as close as you can. But I suppose it's kind of, I guess, front of mind in the number of clients that we've taken on, where the previous accountants have just kind of like done whatever and then just done a journal to like make it work, even though it's just a figment of somebody's imagination. And then we just have to, it's a problem then we have to unpick, isn't it? So I guess if you're going to have this long-term relationship with a client, trying to reduce those kind of inconsistencies as much as possible, because it might bite you in the backside later on if things were just fudged, I suppose, is something that I guess I think would be worth spending some time on, because I haven't done it luckily, because I'm the software guy, so I just kind of hear the complaints about it. But it feels like those can be a real problem when you get something from an accountancy practice who has just kind of put random stuff into Xero and reconciled it, and it doesn't match reality. It doesn't fix the problem, does it? And you have to unpick it all. So anyway.
And I think that is a decent point to kind of like emphasize, and I think particularly when you're working with backlog at work, it can slightly slip down your list of priorities of it's not just, we're not just trying to kind of get a lovely clean bank rec screen. Obviously the balances do need to match, and so it's just as well, I prefer not to kind of work month by month. There is a check of, are the balances actually matching, and that might then mean going back month by month to make sure that that is the case every single month. But it's making sure that they do match. And when you are working on backlogs, kind of being aware that sometimes you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, and particularly say if they're coming to you with a Xero account that was reconciled and then there's been a gap, and now you're picking up to go back and do that gap. What has gone before may also not be quite correct, so you might not necessarily be starting from a clean page and then just filling in, say, 6 months of missing work. There might be quite a bit of stuff that you need to unpick, or at least be aware of prior to that as well. So I think being aware that backlog work can sometimes really throw up some quite tricky and interesting situations is quite important as well. So like there was a period where when I first started the practice, I did do quite a bit of backlog work, and then did not have good experiences, and so just stopped doing backlog work at all. And then kind of once we discovered the love of bank rules, I guess, and how things were able to be dealt with much easily, have then started bring back some backlog work as well. But it can lead to quite a few other things as well, I think.
So I guess the key thing would be to kind of maybe step one is kind of get the lay of the land in the accounts before you even start, because if already the bank account isn't reconciled to match the balance, and then you start doing a load of stuff and they're struggling to get it to balance, well, it's you were never going to be able to, because it was wrong before you even touched it. So I guess that's kind of like a step one, is see where you are, try to get to a state where you understand it, because we've obviously, and I think this has been a problem for us with Stripe, for example, where there's a backlog. It can be quite difficult to work out on a particular day kind of what the balance in the current account, for example, should be compared to what it should be on Stripe. And so if you don't know that you're starting from a correct place, you don't know if you're just trying to chase back a mistake you've made, or if that's been there the whole time. So I think maybe that's going to save a bit of time at the end as well.
Stripe, PayPal, all those sorts of like payment platforms. It can actually be, it can actually be a lot harder than you might expect to work out what the balance is at a particular point in time. So we've definitely had that before, where we've kind of completed all the backlog work for a Stripe account, and then we've got a difference, and we're chasing this difference round, and it was actually already there in the first place. So
it's kind of like differences between kind of maybe just a day or two of difference between what Stripe does and then when it clears in different places can and then also the fact that Stripe obviously pushes out a payment that represents maybe a few sales, and maybe there's some fees, and maybe there's a refund that's happened. Like there's lots of stuff, isn't there? So yeah, you really do need to make sure, I think, that kind of, yeah, month by month, you know that you're at the correct state, so that you know when there is a problem, how far back you have to go. Otherwise, you're just kind of committing to, yeah, kind of checking for the most recent as back as far as it takes on you, which is not necessarily going to be any good. Anyway, that sounds like we've ended on a bit of a downer, but I feel like a key part to save yourself, save your sanity, is to make sure that you haven't inherited anything too awful, and that it's kind of, you know, where you stand, so that you are not chasing down someone else's mistakes once you've spent hours or days doing some work. Is kind of like a key tip that we have just remembered as we've gone through the trauma of all the backlogs that we've done. Okay, well, everybody was so wowed that we didn't need any answers to any questions, so we're all good.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us.
We've got another page, don't have you?
No.
Should have. You can't see an extra page.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Ah, I added some extra stuff, but anyway. Right, so we did any questions.
Do you want to talk about the extra stuff then?
Well, it was just I'd put a QR code on to book a trial, because, you know, we're not very good at using these webinars as a sales opportunity, are we, for our bank rate bot? So I thought I'll put the newsletter on. That's a good idea. And then I'm like, hang on, we should be trying to get people to have a trial. Here we go. Maybe next time. Okay, so yeah, we haven't actually agreed this. So we can't do the webinar on the second Thursday, can we? Are we having a break?
Yeah, should we have a break and come back in November?
We can't go back in November either.
Okay. We will not have a break, and we will come up with another date. Oh dear. We will find another date and then let everyone know. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, seamless link, then amazing. That is how you will find out about what date we will be doing, and we'll next month and November.
Book you on LinkedIn.
Yes, we will.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We will share the video once that is finished. It'll be uploaded to YouTube. So yeah, in the event that you're like, I want to go and relive that 40 minutes of my life again, then, you know, your wish is our command. So thanks very much, and whenever we have the next webinar, hopefully we will catch you then.